Tonight, our special coverage as Israel's war propaganda is met with global condemnation. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Aisha Ashraf. Today is the 39th day since Israel has been waging war on Palestine. After a 3-day siege, Israeli forces have conducted a raid on Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. It is the largest medical complex in the besieged strip. Thousands of displaced and injured Palestinians had been seeking refuge in the hospital. A spokesperson for the International Federation of Red Cross says the situation at the complex is raising grave concerns. Multiple sources report that Israeli forces are holding more than 200 Palestinians in the compound's courtyard. Hospitals' patient rooms have been hit during artillery shelling, causing material damage to the specialized surgeries department. The Director General of Gaza Hospitals is calling for the evacuation of 650 patients, including 22 in intensive care units. He says 36 premature babies and individuals on ventilators are under a severe threat. Nearly 400 medical staff and 2,000 displaced people are also trapped in the complex. Hamas is denying allegations of the Israeli government of using hospitals as command centers. It is accusing Israel and the United States of justifying, quote, brutal massacres. At least 3 people have been killed in an attack on Al-Salhi residential towers in Nusayrat refugee camp. An Israeli airstrike has caused casualties in Al-Qarara, north of Khan Yunis. Israeli artillery shelling has targeted flour silos and halted wheat mill operations in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Telecommunications companies have been warned of an imminent halt to services in Gaza due to a lack of fuel. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is calling Israel's offensive, quote, a barbaric war of aggression and an open war of genocide. During a visit to the Zikum army training base near Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his goal is to eliminate Hamas. The Israeli army says it has captured a Hamas outpost in northern Gaza and killed dozens of Palestinian fighters during military operations. At the time of writing, the death toll of Palestinians stands at 11,300. Over 1,200 casualties have occurred in Israel from Hamas attacks. A new poll indicates that approximately 68% of Americans support a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby says the Biden administration did not approve the military operation around the hospital. Kirby says the operation has been planned without the U.S. involvement. He says President Biden has been calling for the protection of hospitals. A resolution introduced by Malta in the Security Council is calling for extended humanitarian pauses, unhindered aid delivery, medical evacuations, and the unconditional release of captives in Gaza. However, previous votes related to the conflict failed due to veto by the US and the UK. Qatari mediators are negotiating a deal between Hamas and Israel, including the release of about 50 civilian captives from Gaza in exchange for a 3-day ceasefire. A truck carrying 23,000 liters of fuel has crossed from Egypt into Gaza. A United Nations official says the fuel is only 9% of the required amount. Islamic Jihad has reported shooting down an Israeli drone in Gaza. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called Israel a terror state that is committing war crimes and violating international law in Gaza. Erdogan has also demanded that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu reveal whether Israel possesses nuclear weapons. He says Turkey will work on the international stage to have Israeli settlers recognized as terrorists as they escalate violence in the occupied West Bank. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called on Israel to exercise maximum restraint in its ongoing war in Palestine. Trudeau says he is deeply concerned about the civilian casualties in Gaza, particularly in and around the Al-Shifa hospital. He says the suffering must stop. He's urging Israel to protect the lives of Palestinian civilians. Trudeau says there is a need for a humanitarian pause in the conflict to allow access to essential services and the safe evacuation of civilians. In response to Trudeau's comments, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended his country's actions via a social media post. In the post, Netanyahu says it is Hamas that should be held accountable and not Israel. Canadian-born Israeli peace activist Vivian Silver, who was previously feared to have been taken hostage in Gaza, has been confirmed dead. Her remains were discovered at her home near Israel's border with Gaza. The area was attacked by Hamas on October 7th. The formal identification of her remains came 5 weeks after the initial discovery. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has expressed his condolences, praising Silver's lifelong dedication to peace. He lamented the loss of a shining light in the peace advocacy community. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has described Silver as, quote, a lifelong advocate for peace. Silver was 78 years old. Originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, she was widely recognized for her work in promoting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Israel's credibility has plummeted on the international stage as the focus shifts from sympathy for Israeli hostages to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Analysts say the attack on the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in Gaza on October 17th was a first step that drew widespread criticism of Israel's offensive. Despite Israeli claims that a resistance rocket hit the hospital, the sheer devastation and loss of life has received global condemnation. Israel's credibility crisis further deepened as it continued to bomb other hospitals in Gaza. A report by an Israeli influencer marketing platform shows pro-Palestinian views on platforms like Instagram and TikTok are 15 times higher compared to pro-Israeli views. Independent media, like Palestinian journalist Motaz Azaida, with 14 million Instagram followers, kept the global audience informed of factual reporting from the ground. Israel's vague objectives and incoherent media narrative also weakened its stance. The brutality of the conflict further has put Israel's credibility in scrutiny. The global community, Israeli nationals, and mainstream media are increasingly criticizing Israel's actions. While the Israeli military touts victories, Palestinians are meticulously documenting the conflict, forcing global acknowledgement of the brutalities of Israel's war. The United States and the United Kingdom have jointly imposed sanctions targeting Palestinian resistance groups, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The U.S. Treasury Department has announced a third round of sanctions on Hamas. The sanctions target the leaderships of the groups and the mechanisms through which they receive support from Iran. Britain has also added sanctions against 4 Hamas senior leaders and 2 financiers. The list includes the group's political leader in Gaza and the military commander. The sanctions also target individuals and entities acting as conduits for Iranian funding. Sanctions involve freezing US-held assets and generally prohibiting dealings with the designated individuals or entities. A dozen documentary filmmakers have chosen to withdraw from the International Documentary Film Festival Amsterdam due to the festival's position on Israel's war in Palestine. During the opening night of the festival last week, activists seized the stage to voice their support for Palestine. They then unfurled a banner with the message, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Later, in a statement, the artistic director of the festival criticized the Palestinian activism and the display of banners. His stance has sparked discontent among certain filmmakers. Following the criticism, Basma al-Sharif, a filmmaker and member of the jury, withdrew from the festival. As of today, 11 more filmmakers have pulled out of the festival. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.